We're not here today to really protest the government. We're here to ask the government for $1.4 million over the next 3 years so that we can open the best obstetrical and birthing unit in the province of Ontario. Yay. That's our goal. That's been the goal from the beginning. We're here to show the government that we're united as a community behind this cause, that the cause is just, and that our babies deserve to be born in Alliston.
Ballot item number 1, private member's notice of motion number 55. Mr. Wilson.
I recognize the member for Simcoe Grey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that in the opinion of this House, the Ontario Liberal Government should provide Stevenson Memorial Hospital with the required $1.4 million in new funding over the next 3 years so that it can reopen its birthing unit and ensure that enough obstetricians and healthcare providers can be recruited to supply a stable and ongoing service for expectant mothers in New Tecumseh, Agila, Oronio, and Essa.
Mr. Wilson has moved private member's notice of motion number 55, and I recognize the member for Simcoe Grey for his presentation.
I'm happy to rise, Mr. Speaker, and lead off the debate on my private member's resolution to reopen the birthing unit at Stevenson Memorial Hospital in my hometown of Alliston. Mr. Speaker, Alliston is where I was raised. Growing up, I pumped gas at my grandfather's Loretto Tavern and store and bagged groceries at the Alliston IGA. My father owned Jack Wilson Appliances on Victoria Street, and my mother, Teresa, taught at St. Paul's School for over 33 years. My family has lived in the area for more than 200 years, and when I was growing up, we lived on Banning Drive, just a stone's throw away from Stevenson Memorial Hospital. And despite the challenges that almost every hospital in Ontario faces with respect to physician recruitment and coverage, they have managed to cope with 33,000 emergency visits a year. This is a number that is comparable to Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto and certainly higher than any other comparable community hospital. On December 15, 2006, the hospital chose to close its labour and delivery program as a result of funding and medical manpower shortages. The community's objection to this closure was so incredible that over 500 people attended a public meeting on this issue on November 30, 2006. This closure is not only about pride and inconvenience, but moreover it's about safety. Since December, expectant mothers in our area have been forced to drive at the very least 45 minutes to another hospital in Orangeville, Barrie, or Newmarket to give birth. In the gallery today is Marie Quincy, and she spoke out front just a few minutes ago. She gave birth in the emergency department during this closure with the help of midwives. We're also joined by Tamara Fisher-Cullen and Angela Cole, two expectant mothers whose babies should be born in Alliston. And there's another mother, Katie Abel, who gave birth on the way to South Lake Regional Health Centre in Newmarket, not in the hospital, but in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Had we had a local obstetrical unit, this would never have happened. She was fortunate that this happened in the spring and not during the winter months when treacherous driving conditions on our rural roads often force the closure of Highway 89 and Highway 400 for hours at a time. In such a prosperous province like Ontario, I find it passing strange that the government would use the back of a taxi cab or ambulance as an alternative to being born in a local hospital. I find it also very strange that this government would campaign on a promise to bring healthcare services closer to home, but now are telling expectant mothers to drive away from home to give birth to their babies.
I was born at Stevenson Memorial. My daughter, thankfully, was born at Stevenson Memorial. And I would really like this one to at least know that future babies can be born at Stevenson Memorial. This one's due in 2 weeks. I think this one may not have that opportunity, but I want to know that other babies will have the option of being born at Stevenson Memorial in Alliston, close to home, close to families, close to the support that women and family need at this time of their lives.
Not long after the announced closure, a community advisory committee was struck to explore options to maintain a sustainable obstetrics unit. Stevenson Memorial Hospital has capacity for up to 584 births per year. The current estimated number of babies being born in the hospital's catchment area is 854. This includes New Tecumseh, Agila, Oronio, Essa, and Innisfil. What we need is bridge funding to repatriate these births back to Stevenson Memorial. The help we need from the province is $601,000 in year 1, $411,000 in year 2, and $351,000 in year 3, for a total of $1.4 million over the next 3 years. Under present circumstances, there is no way that the hospital can afford full obstetrical and birthing services without the support from the province, and that's why we're all here today.
Community-based, close to home, accessible, reduced waiting times. For years now, those have been the themes of the government that have been reiterated in several speeches. How can the removal of a birthing unit in a growing community be in keeping with the ideals that have been the mantra of the Liberal government? It is a requirement of the SOGC, the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada, that an obstetrician be within 30 minutes of their patient when they are on call for births. Yet largely due to funding issues, the hospital in Alliston does no longer provide that type of care, and women are forced to leave the community driving for 45 to 60 minutes in good weather without cottage country traffic to their care provider.
This is a very small and reasonable request, I say to the government, when you consider we are dealing with a $37.9 billion healthcare budget. Our request is merely a fraction of a percent. In fact, it's 0.0037% of the health budget. And the government can't tell us they don't have the money. We know that provincial revenues were $3.4 billion higher than expected this past fiscal year, and your debt servicing costs were $600 million lower than expected. So that's $4 billion more you have to spend than you expected to take in this year. With $4 billion more than you budgeted, you could easily eliminate the health tax and put $1.4 million into Stevenson Memorial Hospital. In last month's budget, the government gave a $50 million grant to the Magna Corporation, hardly the poorest company I've ever heard of. And you also found $5 million for Tom Parkinson's severance package from Hydro One. And yesterday we learned in the Toronto Star that you pushed $20 million out the door in a year-end political slush fund, and yet you can't find $1.4 million for expectant mothers and their babies in Alliston. Just to help highlight what an emotional and important issue this is, I want to read part of a letter I received from Erin Watson of Alliston. She wrote, "Mr. Wilson, please continue to fight to keep the birthing unit at Stevenson Memorial. I delivered all 3 of my children there within the last 8 years, and without the hospital being so close, I don't know what I've done when I had my first 2 children. I didn't have a car at the time and was a single mum. We have many single mums in our community that don't have transportation to and from Barrie and Newmarket. I could go on for hours giving reasons that closing the birthing unit would be a disaster for this community. I'm raising my 3 girls here in Alliston, and I want them to have the opportunity to have their babies in the same hospital they were born in years from now. With the outcry that this has brought forward, I'm disgusted it's being considered further. If there's anything I can do to help stop this, please let me know. I am more than happy to help." Mr. Speaker, this is just a sample of the many, many letters and emails I have received. It speaks volumes to how important and emotional it is to welcome into the world new human life. Mothers deserve this government's full support.